Okay, come on out. We are a hybrid panel, so we will hope that the technology works. Let me start by introducing our in-person panelists. Next to me is Janna Verburg-Hamlett, who is, tell us what you do, because I don't think I'd get it right. You have two different jobs.
I do. I have a dual appointment. So I work with University of Idaho Extension. And then I also work with Tech Help, which is Idaho's Manufacturing Extension Partnership Center for the state of Idaho.
Yeah, she does a lot of really cool things in the region, so we'll hear a lot about that. Amy Mattias, I got that right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Is the director of the Sun Valley Institute for Resilience, which Amy mentioned a little bit before. I'm going to ask Amy to tell us a little bit about what that is. And very much looming over us all is Alex McCoy, who is founder and CEO of American Ostrich Farms. He'll show us a little about that in a minute. I believe you're at Denver Airport. Is that right, Alex?
That's correct.
Oh,
can you hear me?
We can hear you well. So perfect. Beautiful. Well, what we're here to talk about, as Amy mentioned, is sort of community resilience. So we've kind of heard in the last two sessions about kind of a global view of heat and resilience, and then more state-oriented approach. And now what's happening in a community, this community, and this region. And these three are super deeply involved in what's happening, and they even are working. Actually, there's cross-fertilization among all three of them, which is really cool. And I thought maybe we could start by just asking Amy to describe why we should care about community resilience, and a little bit what the Sun Valley Institute does.
Yeah, sure. Alex, I think you're on slides, correct? Can you share slide one?
It is. You know, it's not allowing me to do screen sharing.
You up there, though. Try putting up a slide and see if it will allow you.
Either enable my screen sharing or do it locally. Either way works for me.
I think Amy ran back there to get somebody to enable
why don't you
screen
just start?
sharing. Okay, I'll just start. So as they mentioned, I'm the program director for the Sun Valley Institute for Resilience. We are a small nonprofit based here in the Wood River Valley of Idaho. We envision a resilient community where the economy, the environment, and the people thrive. Our work strengthens our community resilience and the ability to respond to risk by empowering everyday action, investing in rooted ideas, and transforming the regional food system. In our view, resilience is being prepared to respond to both acute and ongoing risks, and that preparation is achieved by a diversity of ideas, tenacious human energy, and infinite resolve. Resilience is the power of the community working together. To put our work into context, this will be better if we can get the slides. So
we're making progress. We have a split
screen. We're close.
Pictures now.
I know. I have a really pretty illustration of our future Southern Idaho based on a vision. So in late 2019 and early 2020, I had the pleasure of leading our team on creating a food vision. It was through a Rockefeller Foundation, Second Muse and Open IDEO 2050 food vision competition. We were semi-finalists in that. And if we can get this beautiful illustration up to share with you, we envision a Southern Idaho with abundant natural resources, and that includes clean waterways, biodiverse forests and grasslands, and thriving communities. Communities where youth have the opportunity to make their dreams come to fruition, where all people who are working have access to fair wages. Let's see, can we go to slide 2, please? That's the lovely illustration.
Look at that.
There we go,
right.
beautiful. That was worth it, right?
That really is worth it.
It's pretty cool.
What a slide. We should leave that up here for a minute.
Okay, so all people have access to fair wages, and everyone can breathe clean air, breathe fresh air, drink clean water, use renewable energy sources, eat whole, regionally produced food, and feel safe and secure in their surroundings. We envision, yeah, it's pretty awesome, right? We envision a regional food system that is both diverse and redundant to ensure more secure supply chains. Our vision for Southern Idaho is being shaped by our commitment to transforming regional food systems, empowering individuals. Alex or whoever, go to the next slide, please. So should I stop there or should I talk about some of our
Well,
work?
just quickly talk about some of the work, especially the Impact Fund,
Yep.
since
Perfect.
Alex is a beneficiary of
Great.
that, and we're going to hear from him in a minute.
Line me up perfectly with another beautiful visual here. So we have 3 programs. We have the Impact Idaho Fund, the Local Food Alliance, and 5B Resilient. And we're addressing both systemic issues and ensuring that everyone is empowered to make decisions that lead to a more fruitful future. The Impact Idaho Fund was launched from a need that we heard while implementing our Local Food Alliance work. We had a number of entrepreneurs approach us and say that in the food and ag sector, and they wanted to do things differently. They wanted to start new innovative businesses. They wanted to diversify and expand their existing operations, but they couldn't access capital. They might have businesses that were too innovative for traditional lending. They might not have had 3 years of experience to tap into some of those federal dollars and programs. So we saw an opportunity to leverage impact capital to fund their businesses while we could integrate some of our other work to ensure that we could develop strong markets and tell the consumer the story of their burgeoning enterprises. So to date, we have funded 5 portfolio companies with just shy of $400,000. Our portfolio consists of 2 market gardens, which grow a diversity of produce right here in Blaine County. We also have funded a pasture-raised organic micro-dairy operation, an indoor mushroom farm that's using solar power for energy, and a USDA-inspected livestock processing facility, and that's represented here with Alex on the line. I have a couple impact data points that I just want to share with folks. So by the end of 2022, our borrowers had distributed over 60,000 pounds of food into our regional food system. By selling locally, we estimate that that's avoided almost 75,000 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalents from emissions alone. Our portfolio represents 160 acres of sustainably managed farmland, and we're just starting to see these impact figures as most of the companies that we have funded are pre-revenue businesses. So we'll see these impact stories grow in the years to come. We're also expanding the fund to meet the needs of our region. So to date, we've received close to $3 million in requests from 10 counties within southern Idaho. So we know we're just starting to tap that project pipeline. We're excited to invest in portfolio companies that touch on each part of the food system. So to date, we've funded production and processing facilities, and we look forward to expanding into distribution, cold storage, food waste and recovery, as well as access points, value-added production companies, and ag tech platforms. And one of the things that's really important to us is regenerative practices. So all of our farms that we have funded so far implement more regenerative practices to steward those natural resources. And one thing that we're looking at doing is expanding into climate smart land management so we can impact a larger number of acres on a larger expanse of land in southern Idaho. So to achieve our goals, we are currently fundraising. So if you're excited about what I'm talking about, come talk to me and see how you can support our efforts. And I'm really excited to be on this stage today with Alex, who's one of our projects that we funded, and Janna, who is a regional collaborator. And I just am plugging that Janna and I are on a steering committee together for Idaho in a regional food business center, which is a new USDA program just announced a few years ago.
I want to get into that.
Ago.
We get into that in a little detail in a minute. What I like about what you're doing is you're taking a very holistic view. You're working with producers, trying to help the business ecosystem. You're educating consumers, and you're also putting money into promising new organizations and companies. So that's really cool. So speaking of promising local organizations and companies, let's see you again now, Alex. You can put yourself on screen, I hope. Oh, there, you could put that on screen. Okay. Well, why don't you talk and tell us what we're looking at, and then we'll get you off the postage stamp and back looming over us.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I will be there the rest of the week. Sorry to have to join like this. I'll do a couple of things to keep it short and sweet here. First is just a very basic overview of who we are, and more importantly, how do we fit into this narrative and specifically this panel. So very quickly, you have to help me out here, David. How many of you in the audience have eaten an ostrich burger or had an ostrich steak before? Show of hands.
More than half.
Oh, yeah.
More than half, Alex, definitely.
More than half.
You
Awesome.
you must be part of that. You must be part of the reason for that. But go
Yeah,
on.
I seeded the crowd. Yeah, that's all me. The great thing about Ostrich here is it's incredibly environmentally sustainable. I think everyone in this audience is familiar with how damaging conventionally raised beef is to our environment in a number of ways. So I'm not going to go into it. Ostrich is a real animal, as you guys all know, and we have the environmental sustainability stats that plant-based foods do. It's pretty amazing. So I decided to start raising this animal 10 years ago commercially to give another alternative protein to American consumers. Now, how do I fit in? I don't know if did the slide change to the value chain
Yep, it
slide
did.
here?
Yep. Mhm.
Great. So with regional production of animal protein, it's a very complicated value chain. And for small producers like myself and many others in southern Idaho, it's very expensive. It's very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. And when COVID came, like a lot of other producers, big and small, we got kicked out of our processing plants, or many others got their production reduced with social distancing in these slaughter plants where everyone's shoulder to shoulder. So I was forced to build my own slaughter facility.
Because you were kicked out of the one you used, basically, right?
Yes. And so, that was painful. Thankfully, I had the wherewithal to do that, but not many regional animal producers do. With Ostrich, I was forced to create this whole end-to-end value chain. So an extra $3 million for a slaughter facility wasn't the end of the world, but very few people can do that. And so my direct angle on this is how we create regional resiliency. And this is something that I believe can be a model for the rest of the country. 4 animal production companies control 80% of all animal protein produced in the United States. And that's just not a healthy, resilient ecosystem. And so what we're doing here in southern Idaho is I have not only created the capacity to slaughter my own livestock, but I've also created capacity to slaughter and process and do value-added processing that Janna is going to talk about here for a host of other producers in southern Idaho and in neighboring states. So again, I operate in this whole value chain, but arguably the most critical for very many people is this processing part of the value chain. So I'll stop right there.
That's
unless
good.
you'd like me to go into anything more detail.
Don't go anywhere, but your camera's working fine, and everything came through. Janna, this all must be music to your ears, really, because this is you're sort of looking at this at a little more of a state level, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about what you do and how it fits in with what we're hearing so far.
Yeah, so like Alex says, for a food entrepreneur, there's a lot of barriers to entry. Food manufacturing, people die every year from eating contaminated food and beverages. And so being a food entrepreneur, you have to be there's a lot of requirements that maybe being a widget maker or a software maker or whatever don't have to deal with, right? So on the food side, we've got a regulatory environment. We've got 2 federal bodies and state bodies as well that we have to manage. You have a very perishable product. So once you've made it, you got to go, right? You can't just let it sit in a warehouse for 6 months or 2 years and figure out your marketing plan because your product's gone to waste by then. You're going to have to deal with specialized distribution, transportation, if it's a cold storage or a frozen product. You do have the great benefit that we all have to eat. So you've got like a guaranteed customer base, but like Alex said, you are having to come up against some very, very large multinational companies that control a very large portion of the food industry. And so all of those things are available, but they're available at a cost, right? And if you're a small food business, a small entrepreneur, your price point of your product is going to have to be pretty high in order to handle all of those costs. And so if you're a budget constraint consumer, are you going to be able to purchase the product that may be 4 or 5 times more than the brand name whatever product we're talking about that's available at the local store, mega store, That's probably, a buck and a quarter kind of a thing versus somebody that maybe would be for $5. Granted, there's a nutritional factor there's the environmental factor there's a taste and an organoleptic, but if you've got a short budget, you've got to feed your kids and family, you're probably going to pick that lower cost. And so with food entrepreneurs, when we're trying to develop new products, new markets, there's that barrier that we run into that other kinds of areas maybe don't have as much.
But a lot of what you do is sort of, and I think both of you do, is think about the ecosystem and how you can sort of make various parties play together better, right? And particularly bring economic activity more locally. So talk about some of the things you've done within or out of food, because you've done some interesting things with non-food companies as well.
Yeah. So Tech Help is Idaho's Manufacturing Extension Partnership. The MEP system, there's one in every state, but the MEP system's central mission is to help small to medium manufacturers. And so whatever your pain point is, if you're a small to medium manufacturer, you can reach out to your MEP and look for some solutions. And so we were discussing earlier just some things that we've done. So specifically, there was some discussion over the pandemic and, supply chain issues. And so we had a lot of smaller businesses that couldn't get some of their equipment, packaging, ingredients because of the ports being closed, because of different governmental regulations. Food industry, it's an international food. Every grocery store you go into, you can buy food that's not grown in the US. And so we talked a little bit about how can we help those local food manufacturers? How can we help them with some of their solutions? And so we shared some ideas that we've got a local confectionery, and he couldn't get his packaging, his little blister packs, because they came, again, he was small, so it's not like he can order semi-loads at a time. So we were able to find him a local processor that was able to make those products for him. We had another processor that makes a dairy dessert, and their equipment is very specialized. And there's two companies, and they're both in Europe. And so they have broken equipment, and they can't get the spare parts in stateside. So found a local CNC machine shop. They took the broken one to them, and they said, "We need this, but it's supposed to go together like this, not fall apart like that. What can you do?" The gentleman was able to draw it up on the CAD, put it on the mill, voila, there you go.
And you helped them find the machine shop.
Yeah, so a lot of what we do is it's that inner network, right? It's you don't maybe know what everyone else can do. And if you're a food entrepreneur, you have to wear numerous hats, right? You're the marketing person, you're the salesperson, you're the product developer, you're lots of times the processor. You are all of these, and so you may not know what all is about. And so we had another small company that couldn't get an ingredient, but I knew of a large company that was able to have that ingredient. So we just had a conversation saying, "Hey, can you slipstream a few bags over here?" "Oh yeah, no worries, have them drop by the warehouse." And so being able to provide those local connections and that networking where they can talk with each other and try to find those solutions basically in-house or within the state or even within our region, that's helpful.
That is a super valuable thing for a local business to have available to them. So congratulations. Is that kind of functionality available in most places, or is this somewhat unusual?
So the MEP system, like I said, every state has an MEP system, but some MEPs focus on specific industries. There's not a lot of states that focus on food. Idaho happens to be one of them. We've had a long history of predecessors of mine that have focused on food, helping food manufacturers in Idaho. So yes, the resources are there, but maybe they're not as easy to find sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of, I guess your gift is making, sort of managing or orchestrating the ecosystem in a way.
Yeah, we just want to help
cool.
manufacturers with their pain points and whatever those happen to be.
So great. So Alex, you got some help from the Silicon Valley Institute. So Sun Valley, sorry. That shows my background. I'm a tech journalist, sorry. The Sun Valley Institute. So talk a little bit about what that relationship and what that was able to, what that helped you do.
Sure, and that, you have to be creative with the capital that you raise, especially as a food business. This is not a cap-light business. Thankfully, I've had the Silicon Valley crowd help me out as well. This is not something that you can do all by yourself. It takes an ecosystem of partners to help. So the Sun Valley Institute gave me a low interest, below market loan that with terms that I would not have been able to achieve otherwise, to help me finish financing this USDA inspected slaughter facility that was recently constructed on our property.
Right. So you're playing a role not dissimilar to the role Janna plays in a situation like actually giving money, which is probably you don't do too much of that.
No, we can't get
Janna does all the good technical stuff that's
So you two-
necessary to make things operational, and we come in and support financially with some capital that's available. And then we also, because we're connected to consumers and a lot of business to business transactions, we work on what we call like the value chain, right? So all the players that connect from farm to plate, all those in between pieces, we can help connect those dots. And we also, like Janna said, a lot of this is a network, right? So we have a big network in Idaho of food producers. So when a rancher calls me and says, hey, I don't have a slot at my local processing facility, do you know of anyone? I say, oh, you can call Sustainable Meats. They do amazing work there, right? Or, oh, if a chef calls me and is like, I want a unique protein option. Oh, well, talk to American Ostrich Farm. So some of our work, a lot of that's behind the scenes. We don't necessarily get all the credit for it, and that's okay. We just want to help tell the story and have everyone who lives in our community or comes to our community experience the flavor of Southern Idaho.
Well, in this way, what you two do is quite similar in certain respects, which is very cool. I'm sure, and you work together in certain areas too. One example of what you did, maybe that I thought was so interesting, was the alfalfa farm that wanted to start growing vegetables. Just talk quickly about that.
Sure. So a local market garden here, Lookout Farm, they purchased around 17 acres right south of town. So if you drove in, you drove past it, could see the big hoop houses on the property. And they wanted to convert alfalfa, which is a perennial plant that's often grown as forage for livestock. It can be slightly water intensive. It is genetically modified. So there are chemical inputs that are utilized in the production oftentimes. And they wanted to transition it from alfalfa production into a diverse produce production. So we helped fund them in that land transition using no chemicals and minimal tillage. So really reviving the soil health of that. Last year, they started with cover cropping to build the soil fertility. Last year, they had a pumpkin patch. So they opened it up to the community. People came out, enjoyed food, took some pumpkins home, took a lot of pictures, and they'll be doing that again this year. So the first 2 acres has been transitioned. Pumpkin patch, some zucchini. I think a portion of it will be kale available to the wholesale markets this
More
season.
fresh vegetables for the local community too. So I guess we don't have as much time as I had hoped, but talk quickly about this program that's just about to launch, this national program that you're both involved in. Can you quickly describe that?
Yeah, Amy, you want to go ahead?
So the USDA announced last fall a new program called the Regional Food Business Center Program. So it was to really boost regional food systems throughout the entire United States. So last month or 2 months ago, they announced a project in every single community, including all of the US territories. So if you're US based somewhere, there's someone out there who would be working on this in your own community. We are part of the Pacific and Intermountain West Regional Food Business Center. So Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Janna and I are both on the Idaho Steering Committee, and I am co-leading the Right Size Investment and Infrastructure Theme Team. So we have 4 theme teams: Right Size Infrastructure and Investment, Resilient Animal Supply Chains, Climate Smart Commodity Market Development, and then scaling up regional entrepreneurs in the food space.
So again, the goal is to strengthen local economies.
Correct.
Really.
Yep.
Well, you know, since the topic is resilience, and we all went through this terribly assaultive pandemic, which undermined resilience, any thoughts as we close of what we learned from the pandemic? Because that was an assault on all of us. And I think this word resilience has very much risen up as a result of that problem in so many arenas. And I'm just curious if there are any lessons that any of you take away to sort of close with based on what you learned during the pandemic.
Who wants to start? I can quickly say something.
Go for it.
I've been working in food systems for over 10 years. No Nothing has ever made food systems more approachable or interesting to as many people as the pandemic did. So it's a small silver lining to a horrific global situation. I also think people for the first time really experienced acute supply chain shocks. So localization is what can remedy those supply chain shocks. So building more regional economies where we can become more regionally reliant on ourselves for our needs, I think is, for me, a silver lining with the pandemic.
Alex, any closing thoughts or comments on, you made a big shift in the pandemic, and any observations on what you've heard from our other panelists or anything else?
Yes, I mean, I guess, what you learn in business school about producing things is you want to make it as efficient as possible. You want to get your variable costs as low as possible, leverage all your fixed assets to the hilt in order to make a reasonable return. What we've seen is, a risk that we thought was totally fat tail, totally black swan, just happened and put a lot of regional producers out of business forever. And kind of what I learned was a respect for more than just the academic nature of how to produce things at low cost. Creating slack in that system is more than just, you got to think about it in a way other than I'm going to reduce my return on equity or my efficiency ratios, because there are entire industries and people that have built, fifth, sixth generation type of businesses that rely on other folks not squeezing every last percentage out of the efficiency of the system. And creating resiliency, to me, especially in this industry, in which I've only been a part of it for 10 years, is just so incredibly important that my takeaway is you have to think beyond the nuts and bolts businesses, how to make money in a manufacturing context.
Yeah, sometimes things might cost a little more, but you get a lot of community benefits out of it.
Yeah, and so really flexibility, right? Adaptability, where before you can't just depend upon the old fail safes that's the way it always used to go. Well, that's probably not how it's going to go now. So being much more adaptable, much more flexible, roll with the punches and figure it out from there. That definitely was a lot of the conversations. So we used to do it this way. Well, that ain't going to work no more. We got to try something else.
That kind of lesson is probably something we're going to keep learning.
Sure.
Well, thank you to all three of you. Thank you, Alex, for zooming in, and thank you all.
Thank you.